Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everything you know about armor and the way armor works in Hard to Survive 4 is wrong. 100% wrong. The way armor is calculated now isn't a matter of can it be pierced and can it not be pierced. It seems to be lots of sliding scales in between, which is really cool because it means now if you're making less efficient tanks, particularly even in multiplayer game, but even more so in single player, you actually still are going to take advantage of the tank's bonuses. And the tank's bonuses are mad strong. So prepare to forget everything you knew about tanks and relearn it with this video. Tanks are mad strong. Again, even if they're not very good. That's right, you. You know that guy who makes the least efficient tank design possible? You know you? You? Well, guess what? Even though it's shit, it does still kind of work. Let's talk about that. So, we did a bunch of experiments. Today, I'm going to show you the result of these experiments and how you can make a more efficient tank in the long run. So, first of all, we are presented with the most humbling of infantry division with a tiny little sprinkling of armor on it. This adds 3.4 armor to this overall division. Doesn't make a great deal of sense because the overall armor of the division is 4.4. We'll rely on this number, 4.4, put it that way. With the Panzer 2D, the total armor of the division is 4.4. It works on the overall average of the total amount of the division. So, the normal way this would work is if they couldn't pierce that tank, you would get a tank bonus. What basically means is they would have a penalty to the amount of damage they could deal to this division. Let us illustrate. We right-click on this horse. We're about to attack. The battle has begun. And we hop into the battle here and have a little bit of a gander. This would be the icon you would look for. Now, these numbers are how it used to work in the past. In the past, if you had more armor than piercing of the enemy division, it would mean that 50% of its attack power of the defending division would be ignored. So it doesn't show it with this, but in this case, it's dealing a base value attack of 4.8%, but it's losing some of that because of its nighttime. So the base damage is 3.2. But it's not 3.2. It's being reduced by 50% because it can't pierce this division. So basically 50% of the damage it would normally be doing to the organization of the division, as well as the strength of this division, damaging equipment, as well as damaging org, so therefore it could retreat or stop its attack. 50% of that is ignored. So its attack potential is significantly higher because most of the attack on the opposing side is being ignored. Have I lost you yet? Are you still with me? In short, if you have more armor than they have piercing, 50% of their attack that they deal to you is ignored. I guess that kind of works a little bit like RPG games. If you wear armor, it reduces the amount of damage they deal to you by a fixed percentage. In this case, 50%. Now, that's the way it used to work. And it's slightly got a little bit more complex. And you can see that breakdown by clicking on, well, anywhere on the menu, actually. And you can click on the helmet here, or you can click on any blank space of the division. Can you see this? It's the bottom. So this is the full breakdown. So the armor amount is 4.4, but the base value that they're actually going to use in game is 4.4. It's not 4.73, it's 4.4. You see that at the very top? 4.4. Well, don't worry too much about hardness. We'll say that for another day. If you want a video on hardness, let me know in the comments. And the next one is piercing to 28.564, but that's rounded down to 28.5. I believe 28.5 is what the game actually uses. It rounds down most of these numbers because otherwise it just creates big number salad of too many numbers. And then it breaks down into individual categories based upon the comparison between armor and piercing. So the very bottom one means is less than 50% pierce equals 50% damage. And that is exactly what's happening in this scenario. I have 50% more armor than they have piercing, and therefore the damage they can deal to me is reduced by 50%. And that is what the bottom equation is. So this is a little bit confusing, I'll admit, because it shows the bottom number in red, and that red doesn't represent anything other than that's the maximum bonus you get from not being pierced. But if you hover over the shield here, it tells you that you can deal 50% of the damage, which basically says that's the bottom number being calculated, the best possible bonus. All right, let's initiate another attack, but this time I've maximized the strength of this horse division. So now the dynamics changed a little bit. So you can see now the shield icon doesn't appear the same way it did before. This is what you refer to as a partial piercing. So we're going for one of the in-between numbers here, and it says 80%. In this case, we're still getting a bonus for the using tanks and using armor. However, it's not ignoring 50% of the damage being dealt, the 50% of the soft and hard attack on the right-hand side. It's now ignoring 20%. And if you look into the breakdown here, it follows into the one from the top. Can you see that? If greater than 75% piercing equals 80% damage selected. It would be kind of cool if that number was green to indicate that was the bonus you're taking advantage of. So that's the mathematics behind it. That's how it's calculated. How does this change the way you play the game? Well, the good news is now if a division has very little armor, like in this case 4.4 armor, which is a very measly amount when you really think about it, it actually still has an impact on that division's ability to fight in combat. So I personally think now the old recon meta that I said was dead has now been reborn as a partial piercing modifier. So if someone was to say to me, if there's a way of adding some armor to my division to reduce the damage being dealt by 20%, I would go for that because it's really worth it. Just an infantry that's holding the front line to reduce the potential damage being dealt by 20% is 100% worth it in that circumstance. So this instance, this specific scenario, it's really worth it. Now here's the howevers. So if we're attacking a division, and let's say in this case here, we're going to find ourselves in two different scenarios. So this horse division here is the exact same one we were fighting here. So in this case, the horse is trying to deal 100% of its damage and 20% of it is being ignored because it can't pierce enough of the tank to deal its full damage. So it's having a reduction. Now the infantry, on the other hand, the infantry is 80% as well. Okay, that's interesting. So we get a full breakdown of that. If we hover over here, you see the piercing on this is 4 and the piercing on this one is 3.9. So to be honest with you, the equation is exactly the same. I thought the infantry had some like artillery on it, so it had a little bit more piercing. Let's try this infantry division here. They're all 4. So in that case, let's try upping the armor on this division just to represent how you could take advantage of this bonus the maximum possible way. In this case, we've added an extra light tank on, adding a 13 maximum armor, waiting for it to resupply. It's 11.4, so it is higher than before. And if we attack, we can see that they're not piercing at all because they've not got the piercing icon on the right-hand side. And you can see if you hover over here, you get the actual full bonus of 50% damage reduction. As you can see here, if you hover over the division itself, you can see it's the bottom one that applies. So we have over 50% more armor than their piercing, and so therefore the amount of damage that's being dealt to our infantry is reduced by 50%. So let's talk about some of the ratios, I suppose. Let's dumb this down a little bit. The positive side of this is it looks like you can get away with having significantly less armor on your division and still take advantage of some tank bonus for armor, even though it's not a significant one. So a common tactic I used to use quite frequently was to get a light tank recon, maximum armor, add it onto your infantry division, basically take advantage of the light tank meta recon. It used to be a big meta thing, but then they nerfed the amount of armor you could get as a proportion of the division because it was significantly too high. That looks like it's back to me and it works. It's obviously not as effective as it would normally be. However, it's back and it is worthwhile to include that as a part of your division. Another method I used to use was to rush Engineer 2 and get the early flames. In this case, we'll add a flamer on, declare this a flame tank, produce a bunch of those boyos. In this case, we'll replace the light tank recon with a light flamer. So a very measly 12.9 armor. Remove the light tank. There you go. No, now that's the correct amount. 2.7 armor. A very, very small amount of armor. We attack the horse and we don't get any additional bonus here. There's 100% of the damage being dealt to the tank is being received because it's not negating any of the damage. And in both these scenarios, that's the case. Yeah, 100%, 100%. We add a light tank recon on as well. So 2 light tank supports. And 2 light tanks. It has a total of armor of 4.5. And now the piercing is 80%. So we're getting some of the bonus now. So there is like a minimum threshold for this. It looks like in this scenario, at the very start of the game, you need like 5 armor to actually take advantage of some of the bonus. And in this situation, both the divisions are getting a damage reduction of 20% just based on using support. Hey, but a 20% damage reduction just by using light tank recon support is not too bad, right? And then at that point, if you would add an actual proper light tank onto the division, at that point, you take advantage of the actual full 50% damage reduction bonus. Space Marines have always been strong, but now it looks like even if you're not making your tanks correctly, it looks like you're still going to take advantage of the bonus. Don't forget though, there's other things that add armor onto divisions as well. For instance, let's say you were to add on armored cars. There's a little bit of armor to be added with that. Actually, it's less armor if you're going to use that division. And this will give us a total amount of armor of 8.6, which is decent. And that's the full bonus. Surprisingly, the armored car and the light flame tank. Oh, of course. I've got the maximum armored car. That's why. Okay, I've used the cheats to get the maximum armored car that's got decent armor. That's why. There is now potential. If you want to add on a very small amount of armor onto your division, there is a potential now it will be effective. I'm going to be totally honest with you, though. I've sat down and I've crunched these numbers, and I still don't fully understand them. It looks to me there might be like a lower threshold and a higher threshold, and that might explain why the average of the division is the one that's not taken into account. Because it does state there, look, the average base amount of armor is 1.1, and the highest amount of armor is 20%. Guys, if you are a spreadsheet master and you've read the wiki, you know the details, please comment below and explain this to me. In short, adding on a little bit of armor onto your division now is effective. And if you want to know how effective it is, just look at one of the battles and just hover over this and see what percentage you're getting. 50% is the best one, where 100% pierce is the worst one. And then you've got ratios of 80% in the middle and 65% in the middle. If you get in the 80 or the 65, you're still taking advantage of the bonus, even though it's not as big, but it definitely is effective. This has been this way, by the way, for I think just before By Blood Alone, it was released and updated in a patch, and I did get it explained to me by a Paradox dev, but once again, my small rodent brain didn't fully understand it, so it took me a while to get my mind around it. And get this, guys, I made this video and I still don't fully understand it. There's probably a lot more ratios going on than I'm familiar with, but for the most part, I can tell you now, even if you're designing a shit tank, you are taking advantage of the tank bonuses, but it might just be worthwhile to optimize armor on tank divisions to get the full 50% damage reduction. And if you are designing your perfect tank, don't forget, guys, put your armor on it, give it lots of power, and then when it says here, cost you 13 XP, click it, and that will subscribe you to Feedback IRL. And that is where you'll go right now to take advantage of more future content. Hey, segment! Guys, hope you have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.